want to say hello and thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to listen. Sounds like there's a bit of synergy out there in the online world, so let's hope to make this fun. I started this off by asking when was the last time you used a map and for what purpose? And we got all kinds of answers in the chat. People were looking for raccoons and habitats and time to get from A to B and where a city was in Ontario. And there's so many reasons why we are now looking at why we use maps on a daily basis. And I think the phone is one of the, and a phone is the biggest reason why we use maps all the time now. Okay, so I'm going to just show you some cool maps that I've seen out there, and maybe you guys have seen this, maybe not. But here's the first one. I don't know if you have, if anybody's ever seen Visual Capitalist. This is one of the, this is a static map of the depths of the Great Lakes, basically. So one of the things that I love about maps is they take a complex situation or scenario and share it with a picture, and we can all understand pictures so much better. So have a look at here. So here is Lake Huron. So just to orient, this is Tobermory up here. So you can see the red is the deeper area. Lake Erie, Lake St. Clair. I had no idea that Lake Erie had such a deep spot over towards the in the eastern edge of it. Lake Michigan, well, that's way on the other side. But look at Lake Superior. Look at all of those contour lines. Isn't that incredible? I had no idea that that's what Lake Superior looks like underneath the water. No wonder they had so many shipwrecks. You can see why. And then here we have Lake Ontario. So I swim in Lake Ontario. It feels cold all the time, but it's probably colder over here where it's a little bit deeper and you've got the deep upwelling of cold water. So Visual Capitalist is just a really cool site if you ever have some time to go take a look at that. This is another map. So this is now an animated map, same company, Visual Capitalist, and it just shows the seasons. But isn't that, you know, like I look at what we can visually get from this scene, and we can learn so much. It took me about 5 minutes to go, wow, look at all of that. So this is the Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere. This is sunlight, and down in the bottom corner here is cloud cover. So just another really cool thing that's going on. Maps are also getting much more interactive. So this is another one. And this is called bikemaps.org. And this comes out of the University of Victoria. And what they have done, that's why they've got like almost 3,000 entry points. But what they are mapping is citizen, so this is about biking, and there's a citizen collision report, citizen near miss report, cyclist hazard, bike theft, new infrastructure. And some of the things that I really like about our maps now is, you know, with a couple of scrolls, you are looking at the world. And I think that's really powerful, because if we find something that is engaging, that is important and relevant to us, chances are it's relevant to other people as well. And then I've got one more for you here, which is about interactivity. This is from excuse me, an organization called the Canadian Urban Environmental Health Research Consortium. What a mouthful, but it's also known as CANU. And they are here in Toronto. And they are actually, so you can see what they do, but they are actually in the testing phase right now of 2 maps where you can interact with them, and you can actually help them test to test out their products. Healthyplace.city and healthyplan.city. They do, they understand, they look at the tree cover, they look at noise, they look at air pollution, they look at all of these things that contribute to a healthy city. And so then there's metrics associated with that. So if you're interested in testing either one of the tools, you can register there. And I'm happy to, let me just pop that link in the chat here if anybody wants to help out CANU. Okay, back to maps. Okay, so back to me actually. So what I do and why. My basic, what I do is I work with community and advocacy groups to educate, engage, and motivate people to make streets safer and improve the quality of their lives. And why am I doing it? We're in a climate crisis, and I want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by helping people transition to forms of active transportation and micro-mobility for short trips. I think I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole of the car and the bike. I will stop myself there. I've done many different things. I alluded that in my bio. I grew up in BC, so that's where I first got into maps and could pore over topographical maps for hours. I was a ski patroller, dive master, financial investment representative, executive assistant. But the most recent was I worked at Torontonians, and this was in the last decade here when I came back to Ontario. And I don't know if you know Torontonians, but every one of you are sitting on a piece of property in a house or a condo of some sort. And Torontonians was the company that basically took the mapping, the paper maps of Ontario and digitized them. So this is over the course of decades. It took, I think they started in 1990 or something like that. And so your property where you sit right now has a PIN, a property identification number, and everything that is attached to that PIN, Torontonians records, and they are the database holder of that. That's where I got to know about ESRI, and I was like, oh, back into maps, love it. Then at Torontonians, I started to configure Workday, which is an HRIS system. So that's where I started to get into the IT part of things. And what I did was actually configure Workday for the HR business partners and the HR team so that it was easy to manage employees through their life cycle and also track, salaries, vacation, all that other stuff. The reason why I got the picture of the car up there is because while on my way to work one day, guy turned left in front of me, didn't see me. And you can see my handlebar imprint on the door. And then you can see my shoulder imprint on the trunk, sorry. And I'm really glad that it hit the trunk, because if it would have hit the pillar just a couple inches beforehand, I would not have just had a 3rd-degree separation of my shoulder. It would have been a much different outcome. Police, fire, and ambulance all showed up on the scene. I was taken to the hospital, all that stuff. The driver produced false documentation for his insurance. He was driving without insurance. And you would think that, well, police are on scene, so the guy's going to get charged, right? Nope, nothing. No repercussions whatsoever. Other than we had to go through the motor vehicle accident fund because he didn't have insurance, and that's another whole long story. But that gave me some motivation. I've always ridden a bike. It's the best form of transportation out there as far as I'm concerned. But we take risks when we're on the road like that. So ESRI is, I think, probably the largest GIS company in the world. Other people might say different, and I'm happy to be corrected on that. But I mean, you'll see in a minute, but I mean, the gentleman who was from Open Data for the city of Toronto, well, they use ESRI. Conservation authorities use ESRI. There are so many companies that use ESRI, and I wanted to have access to all of that information with what I want to do. A year ago, I took my GIS course, and they introduced me to GeoApps, which is ESRI light, maybe you could say. It's more data representation versus data analysis. I'm not going to do buffer analysis on this, on what I produce. It's basically more to communicate to people via pictures what the data says. So I use story maps and dashboards. And I love their expression, the science of where, because when you think about a location, and this kind of goes back to the land acknowledgement, wherever we are, people lived here beforehand. They had their stories. The landscape was very different. The flora and the fauna and all of that. And I kind of look at that almost like, when they do ice cores and they go down through the layers of ice to understand what happened in the past. That's how I think of land. I think of it visually, except it's not, it's an archive of time in a sense. So data. This is what everybody's all about. And when I was working in the corporate world, executives want data. People want to make decisions based on data, not observation, not gut feel. So that's where I thought, okay, well, hey, I'm going to start searching data sets. So I went into City of Toronto, and I'm just going to use this as an example. So I'm going to look for cyclists. I want to see what's out there for cyclists and maybe collisions with cyclists. So I got six results here: bicycle count location, traffic counts, traffic volumes, e-bike, bikeways. There's no collision stats there. So then I'm just going to abbreviate this, and I took a long road to get here, but I found out it's actually called the KSI file, killed or seriously injured. Oh, well, let's have a look at that. So this was part of where I was leading to before with the car picture. So here's one representation of the data. Doesn't really tell you all that much. So I'm going to hop into this external link. I'm going, where are the cyclists? I want to know where the cyclists are in here. So this is a master file of a whole bunch of other data sets. We've got in here, there's speeding, there's large trucks, there's cyclists, there's pedestrians, there's all kinds of information in here, but it doesn't really show you what it's all about. So I'm still looking for cyclists. So I'm looking at the full details now, and I'm looking and I'm going, oh, wait a second. There it is. It's buried. So open data is open to a certain degree. And I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody here, but they don't make it easy. They really don't. And so if I click on this cyclists file now, this is a subset of what I showed you before. These are all the cyclists seriously injured stats. So I went in here and I looked and I thought, I wonder if my crash is in here because the police were there. No, it's not. It's like, oh, okay. So who's making decisions off this data? How does that work? So this is still an ongoing process for me. I'm still trying to figure it out. But to me, the data set is incomplete. And because I know Jess, her crash is not on here either. And that is something that we both felt was wrong. So what we did to make it right was we created this story map. And this is called Road Traffic Victims Count. And this was for an event on November 21st, where we Jess actually led the event, where we walked down Avenue Road and we understood, and she told us about where people had been killed or seriously injured and what has not been done by the city in order to protect vulnerable road users. So I'm just going to walk through this on a high level. The links will all be available somewhere. But this was done for that event, and to highlight how many people actually die or are seriously injured on our roads globally and in Toronto. So globally, 12 777s crash every day with no survivors. That's how many die every day on the roads globally. And in Toronto, 6 people are hit by a vehicle every day. So going along, hey, now we know that not all crashes are reported. So basically this story map is calling people to action to record their crash, to check to see if it's there and then record their crash. I'm not going to go too much into detail here, but here's the data from the map that I showed you before, but I symbolized it a little bit more. So here, the city wards I mapped in, collisions involving cyclists from 2006 to May 5th are the round circle, pedestrians are a triangle, and the fatal collisions are the diamond. So you can scroll in here, and this is open for public viewing. You can scroll in here and check to see if you're, sorry, I'm just going to move this around a little bit. You can scroll in and then you can actually, there's little pop-ups that will show. I disabled, oh no, there you go. Couldn't remember. So non-fatal injury. And this one, Jess and I spent a number of hours going through these here. So this is a pedestrian collision that you can see here. So this is some of the data that's available. So people can go in here and check to see if their crash is there. And then if it's not on the map, it should be. So here is either through a QR code or through a link, people can enter that information. And once so there's a map, date, date and time of the crash, what was your mode of travel, road condition, and then for vehicle crashes, there's more information that you can have. I'm not going to go into that too far. Back to here. So then this is where people, when they submit that, then it turns into a red plus on this map. So here you've got one where this is July 7th, 2019. Somebody was riding a bike in a sedan. They were hit from the right side, failed to yield. Don't know all of the details. Bruising happened at the time. So, and the white circles are ghost bikes. So you've probably seen them around town. This is the bikes that are painted white. And this one is for Nikita. She was, and I've included links on here. So she was struck by an SUV, 10-year-old girl. So rolling right along, this is actually her ghost bike. And then there's some more information down at the bottom. Calls to action, let your counselor know that you feel the streets are unsafe. So that was the project that I did with Jess. And we have another one. So we've already got the answers to, I'm going to lighten it up a little bit now again. We already got the answers for when was the last time you used a map. So I've got another question for you. Sam, I'm going to keep you busy in the chat. What is your main mode of travel today for your daily activities? And then you can answer it the same thing, is what would be your preferred mode of travel for your daily activities if you felt it, if you felt it was safe to do so? As a safe street advocate and wanting to push people, I'm curious how many people maybe drive now, and maybe driving is the only option you have. But what if it was safer to ride? Would you? I'm always curious about this. It's kind of like a little temperature gauge. Where are people at? Ah, haven't in years. Yeah. Car, prefer bike, walking. Yeah. If safer, bike. Bike, sometimes TTC, bike. Mostly car, but really would prefer to bike everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. By foot and bike, and then public transit. Bike. But we live in Canada and there is winter. Beverly! But you know what? There's so many more people biking now. And you know what? It is no different. You put on your ski clothes and you just hop on a bike versus hopping on your skis. But anyways, I'm not gonna go too far. Feet, but as a food runner, you have to ship bulk food over 20 kg and currently need to drive, walk, transit, and bike when I can. Cargo bikes, my friend. They are awesome. E-assist. What you can pull around on a cargo bike these days is amazing. Awesome. That's great. Public transit and walking. I have a car, but I drive so much less and I don't enjoy it. I don't know why. I used to, but I don't enjoy it anymore. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. Let me just make sure I didn't hit a slide. Okay, there we are. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I see lots of active transit in the chat, so that's fabulous. What I've done, Gabe saw a little bit of this when we were in the when I attended a couple weeks ago. This is what I've done so far. We Belong on Bloor is basically a map of manual bike counts that were done on Bloor West from Runnymede through to Islington. Etobicoke Climate Action, with them, I did my favorite tree, which is kind of an offshoot. In the city of Melbourne, Australia, they rehabilitated a downtown area, and they actually put email addresses on trees, and people emailed the trees. So this is kind of an offshoot of that. You can actually fill in a survey and say something to the tree, and then it puts it on the map as well. And we are now going to be using that for a student activity in the summer for grants. So that's nice that it's being reused. We Want Safe Streets Now, that came from the Avilas on Parkside. They were killed October 12th. And I'm going to just quickly go in here because this is a great representation of a dashboard. So this is where it was. Got a timeline in here. So there's lots of really great functionality with this ESRI, with the GeoApps. And I like the collages, timelines. Here's a really cool slider. This was a student who did this, Hafez, I think is his name. So this is what Parkside looks like now and what the possible future is, given political will. Had to throw that in there. So this is a dashboard, and the dashboard is basically a one-pager. It's a static information page. And I'm going to just pop this out into a new tab. And this is what I mean by data representation. So these people here, so I worked mostly with the Safe Parkside group, and they had a survey just like the other one that I showed you, which geolocated everything. But the question was, what are the top immediate solutions that would make Parkside safer? And what are the top long-term solutions that would make Parkside Drive safer? Well, so what I had to do was pull the data out of ArcGIS survey, out of 1, 2, 3 survey, analyze it, put it together, and then put it in here. So what I found, what was interesting though, is that most of the people were pedestrians that were responding, but install painted bike lane was number 3 for immediate. I was like, huh, okay. And then long-term, protected bike lane. We're not talking paint now, we're talking concrete. That's number 2. So people, non-drivers, pedestrians are also saying that bike infrastructure helps everyone, and it makes the area safer. And finally, we're all at home more. We're all online now. How many of you guys didn't leave the house today? I didn't. So this is where we're home more. Home matters more, I feel. So yeah, so that is going into a dashboard. Road traffic victims count, we went over that. And this is the latest one. And I want to bring this up I want to show everyone this because it actually affects every single person on this call. Justice for people hurt on Ontario roads. So Bill 54 protects vulnerable road users, and it has passed a second reading. What this means is it needs to go through committee provincially, and then it needs to be voted on by the MPPs to become law. And the reason why this is important is because you and me are vulnerable road users. And right now, the current system, drivers that injure or kill someone on our roads face minimal sentencing. So here's 23-year-old Alex. She was killed while riding her bike. She was hit by 3 drivers. Speed was a factor, and there were no charges. So that means this person's still out driving. This isn't against drivers. This is against the law that enables that behavior. So this is to bring bring justice to our streets and equity onto our streets. Because when you think about the real estate that a street is, it is 90% car, but we are 100% people, and we are 100% vulnerable road users. So this will also be in the chat. But I'm asking you to have a look and send an email to your MPP, because this is important. This will protect every single person, whether you're in a car or whether you are a driver, whether you identify as a driver, you're actually a vulnerable road user as soon as you step out of that car. So this was a very long and in-depth story map. I did a collage here. There's lots of, I'm just going to quickly jump through to what you can do and then more information. So this is actually a collection of story maps. So each one of these has more information if people want to see it. So I kind of bent the software a bit because it never said that I could embed a collection of story maps in a story map, but it seems to work. So I'm rolling with it. It's a part of anybody on here who's probably configured software. Sometimes you just throw it in and see what happens. And maybe sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So that is justice for people hurt on Ontario roads. So what is my next project? Well, some of the people on this call are for the next project. And this is with Green Neighbors Network. And there's a couple people here who are from that. And it's community mapping. So this is about us and you. And we want to recreate, we've only had a couple of meetings, but the idea is to create a community map that is relevant and useful for us, for you, for people that ride bikes, for people that don't ride bikes. We're trying to figure out what makes that important, what will make that useful for you. So here is, I'm going to click on this. Oh, wow, that's huge. Woo. Let me just see if I can dial that back a little bit. Oh, I know why it's big. It's because I need to, here's the, so it's print. So this is one of those things. This was the team that built it, and they were agonizing. They were talking about like layers and typos and all this other stuff, because once it's baked in on print, you're done. Well, we're going to digitize it. So we'll be able to update it and possibly have opportunity for citizen input, citizen science kind of thing. So this is the map as it is now. So we're looking at houses with green features, other buildings with green features, eco schools, community organizations, bike shelters, car share services, bikeways, trails and parks. So there's lots of information here. And what we're going to do then is basically put it online. And with that, I have a question, and put it in the chat, is if you could map anything from our community, what would that be? What is most impactful for you, and possibly something that you would go back and use that map for? Lee, see you in the chat. Yeah, economical food sources. Tylee? I'm sorry, Sam, don't know what that means.
Oh, sorry, just saying thank you to Lee for the link.
Ah, there we go. Bike parking. Oh, I like the idea of bike parking, right? Like if people are actually going to ride bikes, they need to know that there's a garage at the end. And what if they need to plug in? That's a data set that I think you as a person with an app on the phone can go along, take a picture of the bike parking and literally say, this has got 4 stalls, no charging, and nothing for cargo bikes. But I tell you, there's more people on cargo bikes. And if we could map the cargo bike parking, ooh, we at least my little Twitter echo chamber would be very happy. Didn't CCTO help make something like that with Code for Canada? Ah, I knew I'd find information here. Battery recycling, electronic waste, public washrooms. Yes, yes. Data from the Watch Your Speed Cremasy, which residential high speeds could be used to advocate for more 30-minute speed limits. Okay, I got my tech. All right. Excellent. I'm so glad you guys did bike parking before. We might pilfer that. So just as a thought, when you were answering that question, think about people who aren't normally thought about. Think about marginalized groups. And earlier in the call, we were talking about people who don't have homes, physically, mentally disabled people, children, seniors. We need to make our streets safer for all of them. And so if in the chat, when maybe this can be my pitch. So my pitch is after my presentation, if you want to talk a little bit more about mapping and what would make it useful and relevant to you, come into my breakout room. I think maps are useful ways to represent information with technology. There's so many ways to both view and contribute to the information that we have access to. That's it. So thank you very much. I appreciate all of your input, and I notified Sam that we're gonna have a look at the chat, so I will get those links. I thank you very much for your time, and for those of you who came because I sent you an invitation, thank you. You make me feel good.